Realist Channel weekly journal. And this week is a little bit different. Obviously, I'm not, doing the tarot reading this time around. We're not going to do that every week. We don't need to do it every week. This week is a special edition of the show. Really excited to be connecting with a monumental figure in the war on consciousness. All the way from New Zealand, it's the fabulous, thought-provoking, and oftentimes hilarious Vinny Eastwood of the Vinny Eastwood Show. How are you doing today, Vinny? Thanks for coming on, man. Really excited to have you.
Cheers for inviting me, bro. I'm, as always, somewhat fabulous, maybe a little bit fantastic at times, but we try. We do what we can.
Well, yeah, right.
On the show, the Amazing Conspiracy Realist Academy Weekly with Brian Cirillo. It's gonna. I like it, mate. I like it. It sounds like exactly what it is.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think I got the name Amazing Conspiracy Realist is because there used to be this guy, I don't know if you remember, who was on YouTube back like 10, 15 years ago. He was the Amazing Atheist. And he was on there like doing a lot of content. Back when I was an atheist, I used to watch him for like, just your materialistic, narcissistic, apathetic kind of vibe. And so I thought I would just kind of play on that. Instead of atheist, it's the conspiracy realist, not even theorist, because we're not dealing with mainly theories. We're trying to show people that there's a real aspect to conspiracy and corruption and stuff like that. So that's really, I think, where the whole moniker comes from anyway. So,
yeah, I remember a friend of mine, a great donor to the show, Barry, he once came up with the term coincidence theorist. If you're not a conspiracy theorist, if you don't believe that powerful people who have a lot of influence use their power to maintain and grow that influence, then you must be a coincidence theorist. Somebody who believes that at some point in the middle of the 20th century, all the most powerful, plutocratic, child-sacrificing Satanists got together with all their money and power and their trillions of dollars and all their interest in the banking sector, and they just said, I think we've got enough money and power. Let's just let everybody be free. Okay, we're not going to pull strings from behind the scenes. Well, let's just stop lying to people. Okay, let's try and make humanity free and vibrant. Is that what they think happened? You gotta be freaking kidding me! God, just what?
Yeah, I feel your pain, man. I feel your pain.
It hurts me in my brain places. Mm-hmm. The stupidity of some people. Like, I remember a friend of mine was telling me that if somebody's got 20 points of IQ below yours, they will not be able to understand what you're saying. They actually physically can't understand what you're saying, the concepts that you're trying to espouse. And in New Zealand, we have an average IQ of 96, maybe 96.5 if you're being generous. A chimp is 85. Okay? The people of New Zealand are not that much smarter than chimps. Okay? And so it becomes really frightening when you realize that in North Korea, communist North Korea, the average IQ is 110. All right? Their children can field strip a weapon and reassemble it blindfolded. New Zealand kids are able to operate TikTok. Okay? We're in deep trouble. And the problem with not being an idiot is that idiots frustrate you. I didn't say that I'm particularly smart, but I'm not a complete idiot. I'm an idiot, but just not a complete one. And so when you're trying to communicate with people, any people, about any subject, your eyes will glaze over and you will start to lose your attention span, and you just suddenly start to get bored with the conversation. And you'll notice that they do the same thing to you. You're so boring that it's not worth my time talking to you, and my brain switches off. And I'm so intelligent that you can't understand what I'm saying, so your brain switches off, right? How are we going to keep? Are we trying to save these people? You know, I had I've had a number of people tell me about this thing that they've been doing, and just when they hear about genocide, when they hear about totalitarian government rounding people up, exterminating them, stuff like that, uh, they're pleased,
Really?
right? Like
So,
as in, there's going to be more room on the roads. There's going to be less idiotic people to talk to and things of that nature. But I'm not sure they've thought it through. In totalitarian regimes, they don't necessarily just exterminate people who are particularly stupid. They focus, however, on those who are particularly bright, because people who are particularly bright might be a threat to a system that is predicated on the dumbing down of its peasantry.
yeah. And I think a lot of those responses that you may have gotten, like where people are pleased at these things, like it's like a utilitarian reaction, and it's really just that they don't want to think in that moment, so they're just going to give you some apathetic like line and just be like, all right, I'll just be done with you. Okay, yeah, good, great. I don't even care. It's just kind of to tell you that what it is a lot of people who don't care about what's going on outside in their inner world or outer world, they don't care. So they don't want you to care either, because then they might start to think that they're wrong or something, or feel like they're wrong in some way for not caring. So I feel like there's a lot of envy and just gaslighting, and you know, it's a very utilitarian way of being, for people that have just not expanded their consciousness, I guess.
Yeah. I also got on this idea that sometimes we can get ourselves on a bit of a pedestal. Like I remember one time I caught myself doing it. I was just driving down the road and I saw this person walking on the side of the road, and they looked like they had taken a few jabs. They looked like they drank fluoride. They looked like they were on the Wi-Fi all the time. They looked like they drank artificial sweeteners. They looked like they ate GMOs. The kind of person I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's, the the masses of humanity that have become victims fallen to this system. It's very, very easy to laugh at them and not take them very seriously, because they take themselves oh so seriously, right?
Mm,
Uh,
yeah.
uh, I have a great difficulty dealing with it sometimes, but eventually I came to the conclusion that it's not up to me. I don't have the right to tell them what they should or shouldn't do. It's up to them, and they have to live with the choices that they've made, just as like I have to live with the choices I've made. I've made some terrible choices in my life that have hurt some of the people that are closest to me. I've traumatized myself and my family and friends and things of that nature. And I have to live with those things. Just like all the people who ignored all the things that I paid attention to, who are slowly dying from them, are also suffering the consequences of their choices.
Very true. Very true. And what I was gonna say too is that, like, I think the frustration, and sometimes that elitism mindset can come just from the fact that when you have been in those situations where you're talking to someone and they don't understand what you're saying, and you can tell halfway through that they're not getting it. It's for me, it's just I end up getting like a distress signal, like that it's like a flight or flight, like just like how do I get out of this? Because I know that they're not on the same page, or they're just not paying attention, or they're tuning me out, or they're a lot of times people will misinterpret what you say, or oftentimes you can't really, they'll just interrupt before you even get to your point, and they'll just be onto another tangent. So You know.
Yeah. I remember my friend Jonathan Eisen, who edits Uncensored magazine, and I asked him, I said to him one time, "Hey, John, I think I've copied your lifestyle." He goes, "What do you mean?" And I go, "Well, I don't go out very often, and when I do, I only see a few people. I do all my work from home and that kind of thing, and I've only got like really a few close friends." And he's like, "Yeah, that's because most people aren't worth your effing time." And it's absolutely true. The vast majority of people are ostensibly not worth my time or anybody's because they don't even take time on themselves, right? There was this lady, I saw this ad on YouTube one time who, at the age of, I think it was maybe 65 or whatever, her husband died. And so she took up piano at the age of 65, and she lived to a ripe old age. She was into her 90s, and she was able to play the most beautiful and intricate compositions that have been written by some of the greatest composers of all time. And people would come up to her and they're like, "Man, you must have been playing since you were a kid. You must have been a concert pianist or something like that." And she's like, "No, not at all." you know and so it depends on what you really want to spend your time doing. Do you want to improve yourself? Do you want to become better, or do you want to just exist? Right? Existence is not enough. Like, if you're a creative being and you're not creating things and willing them into the fabric of the three-dimensional universe so that other people can enjoy them, what are you doing here?
What you're doing, you're getting depressed. I think you've said it on your show before. Is like that's just going to lead to depression in people's, the pain of not living a more authentic life is going to
Mm.
weigh down on them, I think.
So, why did you start doing what you're doing? I mean, did you have like an aha moment, where you like figured stuff out and you stopped? What the things that you lose, you lose your friends, your source of income, you lose your mental stability to a large degree, coming in line with the truth, because you lose everything you've ever learned and everything you've ever known. It suddenly just goes, psst, man, I just spent 20, 30 years accumulating all that stuff. You're telling me it means nothing? It means nothing, mate. Fuck! You
Yeah.
poor bastard.
Well, I mean, for me, it's a unique kind of story. It's not like a lot. I guess I'll just say what it is. So I've basically when I got into, I've been into punk rock and hardcore since I was in eighth grade or like younger than that. And so in the lyrics, and there's a connection because the lyrics and a lot of the themes in that type of music are supposed to be about rebelling against the system or authority. And so what I was trying to, my first step was like, okay, so what everyone's saying that the system is something, there's a certain aspect of the system that each band or group of people hate or don't like. But like I'm saying, like I was just trying to figure out who is behind all this stuff that people are complaining about. Like I see the left, I see the right, or whatever. Like I see the different perspectives out there, but like who's really behind all of this? So like I wanted to know, what is behind the curtain of power. Like, and so like what I could certainly sense in a way that there was when people were watching the news or like I could feel the bad mojo of the Matrix when I was, growing up in a Catholic family, going to church. I felt the bad mojo there. I felt the bad mojo every time my parents turned on the news. And so like it's kind of just I just recognized I didn't know exactly what the system was. I just knew it was something negative. Um, so I got into like a lot of the same political kind of crap that you start off with, like Noam Chomsky and all this kind of stuff. But then it was eventually a friend had just had a David Icke book. I think he had "And the Truth Shall Set You Free." And we were just at the park, me and my friend just smoking weed, and he was like talking about this crazy book that he had. And so from there, he let me borrow "And the Truth Shall Set You Free." And that is what set me on the path, because I read the entire thing from cover to cover, and like David Icke goes through the like the spiritual nature of reality. And he does talk about the nitty gritty of the 5 sense conspiracy as well. He talks about like that we're one consciousness that's just bifurcated and experiencing itself and learning about itself on these different dimensional plane levels. And so that made a lot of sense to me. So I started off with David Icke. He was an introduction to the material. And so basically, I lived on Long Island in the late 2000s. Growing up, I graduated high school in 2009. I was in this band called No Vice, and so my goal was to be like, okay, we're a punk rock band who listens to David Icke also. So I don't know that anybody else is on that trajectory, at least not in our town or community. So we thought that I would bring a unique, contribution to the work through music. But of course, I didn't have, like, I still had the friends. The thing is, when I decided that that's what we were going to do, well, our guitar player decided he was going to randomly decided after being anti-war and anti-military forever, he was going to go into the military because he had no other option, he said. No other option. So he went off to Nevada. And then our lead singer, a female who was in the band, who had been writing the songs with us and had been right along with us in the whole goal, and at least I thought she was, she quit the band with him, and they both ran off and got married out in Nevada while he went into the military. And so it was a big disappointment for me. I was kind of just like, what the fuck? I thought we had something unique and different that we were going to be doing here. And like, you guys are just kind of just saying, fuck it, dropping the ball and just going in the total opposite direction. And then, of course, he started to sympathize, like say, like, oh, you're too much with that conspiracy stuff. Nobody really knows. I didn't know what solipsism really was. But that's when I started to get into that mentality with people. It's like, oh, nobody really knows. Everything's a paradox. What if David Icke is just a shill kind of thing? And like, people just kind of got off it and then got more into their self-destructive lifestyle. And when I didn't really follow that path, then we weren't really friends. And it wasn't like they left me. It's just that they were just like, come on, don't be that way. As in, don't improve yourself. Stay down with us. And so luckily my parents, I had lived with them at the time, and they had already planned on moving away from Long Island and the whole downstate New York area, just because it was just too expensive for them and everything else. I wasn't thrilled about moving, but I was really young. I was like 21. So I moved away. I got depressed and into addiction for a while and kind of lost my way. But then when I got I got a holistic spiritual addiction counselor who convinced me to do yoga and start to get into some just basic body work things that I hadn't been doing, working out, yoga, lifting weights and things. And that's when I started to like get into like the body's intelligence and just I was by myself anyway because I was in a new environment, and all the friends from high school and like the music scene on Long Island I had lost touch with. And so I had a chance to kind of start over. And so at that point, like then I had like a 4-year relationship, and that relationship, by the end of that, taught me what the negative side of like the feminine and just the fact that feminism is nothing to do with what I'm trying to forge in the world, that it's another psyop. I started to, in 2016, towards the end of that 4-year relationship, my ex-girlfriend showed me like how many more things were psyops that I didn't realize. I was like, wait a second. She's mind controlled. It's not like you could just be liberal and be woke or awake. That's not, because they're not. I used to talk to her liberal friends and her about, the things I was learning, MK Ultra. I'd talk to her about the whistleblowers that I'd listened to on Project Camelot, and I would try to like forge some new information. And she's like, you're always talking about conspiracies with everyone that we meet. Why are you doing that? I'm like, it's just my thing. It's just what I love to do. And so once I got towards the tail end of this relationship, that's when I was introduced to Mark Passio's work. And that's when it was a game changer. That's when I started to recognize, like, the problem is that I'm not around anybody that believes in objective truth. So every time I speak about something that I've learned, nobody gives a shit because everyone is just convinced that it's all relative anyway. So I kind of started, it was a transition. It went from questioning authority and being kind of just questioning the political world and seeing what that was all about. David Icke introduced me to some more knowledge, then Mark Passio, and then Mark Passio is the person that influenced me and encouraged me to actually take action. The importance of action. I never thought of myself as someone that would be doing a interview series or making a presentation before Mark. I was always just a guy that was like, I'm just going to be a music guy and incorporate it with my music. But once I got into Mark Passio and Will Keller and the One Great Network crew, it was, they were inspiring me to actually take it a step further. So I hope that helps explain it in a nutshell, but yeah.
Well, it's something that's happened to me a lot is that people credit me with them starting their shows. And it's like, no, I didn't. I didn't make you sit down and watch 10,000 hours of documentaries and podcasts so that you would at least have some idea what the hell you're talking about. I didn't set up your computer for you. I didn't make you do it either. You made yourself do it. And so all credit goes to you. Good on you, mate.
Yeah, I think that the truth just leaves breadcrumbs. And so it's just like I just followed the path. And it's like, so it just kind of, the more people and the more resources that I came across, the more answers I got for things that I was unclear about, So it's just when you're asking the right questions, the universe, the force of truth will come to you eventually with the right answers.
Yeah, I got on the One Great Work Network a little while ago after, what was it, American Freedom Radio collapsed, I think. But yeah, it's disappointing what's happened to the network or the lack of what's happened to happening with the network. Like it's got frequently I see maybe one viewer on the One Great Work Network stream on Twitch, and I'm like, man, that's so disappointing. And I don't see any efforts really being made to try and improve that. Like I'm still posting all my shows and things of that nature on the One Great Work Network, but not a single one of those posts I've ever put up has even had so much as a single view. So that's like, yeah, what's the point in that? I think Mark is just spread too thin because he's trying to focus on doing the One Great Work Network, which is sort of like a side project. He's got his show, and then he's got the tutoring with the How to Become the True Media course. And goodness knows what other stuff that he's doing. I mean, I wish that guy would just take some time off and go bowling sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
It's like apparently he's the mad bowler. He's so good. But it's like in Armageddon, where all these guys are like training to go to an asteroid and stuff like that and save the world. And their boss goes and tells the guys from NASA, these guys need a night off, all right, for at least 10 hours. And they're like, well, it's a security risk. What if they talk about the asteroid coming towards Earth or something? People will start freaking out. And he goes, yeah, well, what if they're up there and they forget what they're fighting for? And that seems to me to be one of the important things to balance in life is that you really do need to do the work, all right? Make sure the work gets done. But also, when the work is done, bear in mind, it's never going to be finished. After you're dead, the work will continue in the hands of others, right? This is how freedom really gestates and flowers, if you will. It doesn't happen all of a sudden with a revolution. It happens because people have dedicated their lives and lived their lives from the truth, and from them living their lives for the truth, they inspire others to do it once they pass on, or even whilst they're still alive. The point is that you need to enjoy it at least a little bit, right? And people have this cowardice about it. They're afraid of the consequences of their actions. Somebody who's never done a podcast telling me, "Oh, but if I do this, then the Muslims will come after me if I criticize them." And then okay, look, just think about the
There are
worst.
people who will actively believe that you shouldn't speak out because, oh yeah, you're right about the conspiracy. They'll hear you. Come on, we're trying to expose it here. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, look at it this way, guys. The worst thing that's going to happen to you is you're going to get kidnapped by an intelligence agency and then satanically, ritually tortured and sacrificed to death. Okay, that's the worst thing that could happen. All right, don't be a pussy. Just freaking suck it up. All right, because what's going to happen if you do nothing? You see?
Suffer. You're gonna suffer. The thing is, the universe really does reward courage. It's an energy that it just speaks to it. It gives it fuel. It gives it power. So it's gonna just reward that power. That's what I've found. So
Well, there was a test conducted. Oh, sorry, continue.
I was just gonna transition kind of to your aha moment. I mean, my audience has heard all kinds of stuff about me, but like, when did you really have that, epiphany, and then decide to like take action from there?
Well, like you, it was a process. So I grew up in an abusive family of very high IQ people. Three sisters, one brother. And I was the youngest. So they all knew how to speak English long before I did. So I was always trying to keep up, and they were always running me down and stuff like that. So it was like growing up in high school without the ability to get away from the bullies at the end of the day, right? It was a very frustrating existence. I was recalling the other day my neighbor Blake Moyle, who I was good friends with. I think I was like maybe 8 or 9 or something like that. And then one day he brings another friend round at the same time, and the whole time that they were there, they were just abusing me, like for no reason. Like I didn't do
That's
anything.
terrible.
And he was like my best friend, and I like basically never talked to him again.
Do you
Right?
find that like sometimes your fake friends were nice to you, but then when someone that they came around they wanted to impress, or someone else was in introduced into the situation, they'd start to become like more of a dick or something toward you?
Maybe, but I'm not sure about the dynamic of that, because I think it was all part of my awakening. I was
Right.
talking with James Robert Wright, who is probably the highest ranking Freemason whistleblower of the 21st century. And so he's trying to tell people about some really scary and horrible and often very personal things. And because he's trying to make a better world. And people like he and I, who have suffered such horrible lives at the hands of other people, are probably the only ones who are really equipped to change this world in some way for the better, because we know how bad it can be and we've grown up in it. And so we're the only ones who are actually capable of dealing with the challenges that somebody who's trying to fight for truth or fight for freedom is inevitably going to face. Now, I remember watching a movie called Serenity, and there was a conversation between the villain and the hero, and the villain's doing terrible things, and he knows he's doing terrible things, but he says that they must be done. And the hero says, "Oh yeah, so you and yours can live in your perfect world," and the villain goes, "I'm not going to live there. There's no place for me there, no more than there's a place for you." So even if we are successful in instituting freedom and ending slavery writ large par excellence, uh, we won't have a place there, you know, because all we've grown up with is conflict and suffering and deprivation and isolation and ostracization from our fellow man. We can't get on with people that well. That's why very few of our friends are actually able to deal with us and the people that we are. That's why you have those close knits and tight friendships with people who have their own problems, and you're there to help them when they're really going through it, and they're there to help you. And that's how you get through. You get through not alone, but together. And when it came to awakening to the truth kind of thing, it's very funny you mentioned Noam Chomsky, because after my first year of university I got arrested for selling cannabis. They caught me with 13 grams of cannabis. They were going to send me to jail for up to 8 years. Wow. For a first offence. In New Zealand, we've got this thing called diversion. So if you get busted for something small or whatever, they don't charge you, and it's not on your criminal record and stuff like that. But if you do it again, yeah, they'll come down hard on you. But they didn't give me that option. So I immediately had to deal with the kind of suffering of that, told the police everything, it was full confession and everything. And then they made up evidence. Even after I'd given them all the evidence that they needed to convict me, because they thought that I was going to have like so much more for them to bust. It's like, man, I've only got 13 grams of weed. All right, you guys had like 2 police cars and a police dog unit. All right, and a whole team of people coming in and searching my house, and you found like virtually nothing. What
they
a waste
you were
of your
the Tony
time.
Montana of New Zealand, I guess.
Yeah. So they made up evidence that I'd sold $58,000 worth of cannabis and told that to the judge, and I was just, what? So simultaneously, when they tell you that if you tell you the truth, they're going to go easy on you, no, they're lying to you. They want you to tell them the truth so that they don't actually have to do any work. All right, in order to get a feather in their cap. Oh, I've gotten this conviction and that conviction, and it's like a game, like a role-playing game, because they put on their uniform, they become a completely different entity, and they go out there and they hurt and they destroy lives, and give themselves credit for doing so. And that gave me complex post-traumatic stress, the first panic attack I ever had in the cells. And this feeling of betrayal, right, for for selling a plant to people who wanted it, that has never hurt anybody in 10,000 years, that was kind of a bit of a big wake-up call that you really can't look up to or trust authority, especially not order-following police. And I didn't even get to know that term until later on when I encountered Passio's work, of course, because nobody talks about order followers except Passio to a large degree. Now, that led me on to going back into my second year of university. And I realized that although I was there to try and learn how to make films and stuff like that, doing film and TV studies, I wasn't actually making anything. And I was listening to these people talk about this stuff that was all in convoluted language that didn't really make any sense, sociology and film culture and all of that kind of stuff. And there was nothing really appealing to me, except when the topic for an essay came up, and you could talk about anti-television discourse. This means talking smack about TV and how bad it is for people. And I had all these assumptions about how bad TV was for people, that it would decrease their attention span, that it would decrease their intelligence, that it would make them more subservient to authority, that it would break social cohesion and come in between friendships and family and things of that nature. Now, these were all just assumptions that I had, and then so they gave me all these books to read, all these source material things from all these old books that are around when television was first coming out, and the exact same conclusions that I'd simply assumed off the top of my head were precisely the same worries of the people at the time that these devices were being introduced into people's homes. And it was the best essay I'd ever written, full-on bibliography. I read all those books and gave all the reference notes and quoted what pages I was referencing. It was my best work. And I got a D-.
Really?
because the lecturer disagreed with me. She said, "No,
That's
TV's
bullshit,
great.
dude.
TV's great. It's so wonderful. How history thing, it's just, and so that's when I realized that university wasn't there to teach me critical thinking. It was there to be critical of people who could think, and
Yeah.
that was a bit of a rude awakening. So I went to Waiheke Island, where I used to live, and went to a party out at Stony Ridge Vineyard, a great dance party. And this guy, who was a friend of my brother's, called Dangerous Dave, he told me, Vinny, you should get into telesales, mate. You should be a telemarketer. And I was like, really? Oh, okay. So I go in and I start doing that after I left university, and didn't get qualified or finish my course or anything. I was like, no, fuck this. And I became like the telemarketer at the company I was working for. We were working for a New Zealand company. We were saving people money on their phone bills and things like that. And in some cases, I was saving people between 50 and 80% on their phone bills and stuff like that, And I was very honest, very straightforward, and very fun to do it. And I was able to get a 50% strike rate. That means that for every second person that picked up the call, I would get a yes from them. The average is 1 in 17, right? Because I knew how to talk to people very straightforward and get them to trust me, not because I was deceiving them, but because I was telling them the truth. And whilst I was doing that, I was listening to what I consider now to be too much Alex Jones. All right, back in the back in the day,
I've been there, man. I know. I've been there hours and hours, and you're just sitting there like, yeah.
I mean, if you listen to too much Alex Jones, you can't have normal conversations with people anymore. Like I remember this one time, my wife was saying to me, "Honey, do you want the cupcakes with the yellow icing or the purple icing?" And I was like, "9/11 is an inside job. Don't you realize we're all slaves?" It's something that takes over your nervous system. In the way that he presents things, and it becomes about this barreling aggression and things of that nature. So naturally, after I wrote a 7-page essay about what was wrong with the company I was working for, problems with their staff retention, the structures, the communication between departments and things of that nature, they fired me. And so at that point, I was suffering from complex post-traumatic stress where I couldn't even envisage working for a government organization or institution. And then I got complex post-traumatic stress from working for a private entity. So I was stuck in between this rock and a hard place of having too much Alex Jones in my head, not being able to work for a private corporation, and not being able to work for a public corporation. So what do you do, Vinny? You quit your job. I took my $11,900 worth of shopping vouchers that I got as a bonus for my last month's work, and I have never worked full time in a job since. I've only been working full time, publishing, editing, recording, mixing, setting up cameras, protesting, interviewing, social mediaing and web building, and all of the ratchets of skills that an entire media organization has. I think I can do, just in terms of my show, I do about 12 jobs during the showtime. And normally that takes between 8 and 12 people to do that, and I learned how to get it done by myself because I was in New Zealand. All right, there's nobody here. Okay, it's the size of Great Britain, and there's only 5 million people. As Steve Hughes would say, that's no one. You ever seen a people waiting in line for New Zealand? You're the one. That's it. And so you had that difficulty of transitioning And I realized something very, very important, which I hope most truthers have to realize through at some point. Two things. Number one, you're still you. All those bad habits you have, all those lies you believed, all those poor behaviors you display, you think now because you're all about truth and you're not about being a slave monkey that you're suddenly cured of all that? No. Okay? And that goes for everybody else around you in the truth movement as well. Whoever they were before they came into the truth movement, that is still who they are. And most people do not change. And so that means that within the movement itself, you've had people who were narcissistic, psychopathic, megalomaniac, egomaniacal pieces of shit, basically. And now they've got a radio show spreading the truth. Do they behave any differently? No, they don't. They've just changed the topic of the thing that they're talking about, whereas the same hurt that they put on other people, the same theft of other people's ideas and properties and things of that nature is still a proclivity for them. And so that was the difficulty thing, is that the enemy is out there. Yes, they are, but there's also the enemy within you and the enemy within your own ranks. That was probably the hardest thing to deal with, especially after, I think it was in 2010, 2 years after I started my YouTube channel, when I got recruited by Danny Romero of AmericanFreedomRadio.com out of Round Rock, Texas. And he used to be Alex Jones's producer. And his one of his guys on his network, Jack Blood, used to be Alex Jones's former sit-in host. And they told me a lot of things about the background of this person who I held up, in high esteem on a pedestal as being some kind of a hero. And I was absolutely very much crushed to hear about the reality behind the scenes. So you can't put anybody on a pedestal, especially not in this movement, because we're all still people, and people have a great variability in their personality structure and the way they go about things. The question is, are they doing the work? Are they being effective at it? And I'm not 100% sure how you measure effectiveness in the truth movement, but I constantly have people, and I mean constantly, that's not hyperbole. Almost every conversation I have with people or comments on the thing is like calling me a legend, because at this point in time, 17 years of full-time alternative media activism, really sticking it in there, carrying the flag for my country and my countrymen, and ain't going to give up. And that's inspired a lot of people, calling me a legend and so forth. However, since deplatforming and whatnot, from becoming the #1 subscribed YouTube news channel in the country to having nothing, and all my work's disappearing, I've lost that legendary status in my mind. I think I've become a little bit more of a myth, like shadows moving through mist. That's my life's work now. You seem to have frozen. Maybe there's a wee bit of a problem on the connection there, guys. So we're just going to hang up and recall Brian. Won't be a moment. Until you actually go into the editing process. I remember this one time I did a show with, I think it was my mate Josh Papworth back in the day, interviewing another friend of mine, Nicola Grace from Health Freedom New Zealand. Wicked interview, like really good. But I listened to the raw interview, and the amount Josh was going and dithering around and stuff like that. And then I told him to just get in the edit a little bit, and it comes out, and he sounds so professional, and it's just like, and it was so good to listen to as well. It was actually, it allowed the information to flow so much better, and so on occasions like that, especially when people need my help, like if they've got a big complex idea, but they don't know exactly how to put it in story format, because those are the two keys to immortality: is narrative and procreation. You either survive forever through the blood of your children, or you survive forever through the works of your stories. And that's what I like to really help people do, is tell their stories and have people be able to understand it and not miss out any of the important bits.
Exactly. I think a lot of what you've been saying in the past few minutes is what the theme that's been coming up for me is, like, we all have flaws, we all have hang-ups, but when you're serving the truth, and like, there's always something to learn from the people that are doing the work. When you're doing the work, there's a potential to teach someone something they didn't know. And you may not be perfect, but if you can get that information transferred over to someone else and it can help transform an aspect of their life, then that's the point. It's not so that everyone loves you for who you are in every single aspect of yourself, because you're flawed, and so that's kind of what I'm getting from a lot of what you're saying.
I found this one thing that was quite interesting is people claim that you need like a thick skin to do this job. And that's not true of me at all. I can have one conversation, even with a friend, and if they're being belligerent and abusive and nasty to me, I will feel that trapped in me for a significant period of time. Usually won't be able to sleep that night. It's one of the drawbacks to having a conscience, which is why psychopaths appear to be so powerful and capable, is because they don't have to recharge their soul at night when they sleep. They don't have any trouble getting to sleep. They don't think about the things that they've done because they don't feel guilt or remorse. And I liken it to this, if you're going to bed and you've had a fight with a friend, you will toss and you will turn, and you'll be pissed off, or you'll be sad, or something like that, and it might take you an hour or maybe even two to get to sleep, actually. And psychopath, on the other hand, not possessed of a conscience, doesn't have that problem. His wife will ask him, "Honey, what did you do today?" And he goes, "Oh, I trafficked 20 children for satanic ritual abuse purposes. Good night, honey." Sleeps like a baby. It's scary, man. It's scary to know what we're up against. I was, as I mentioned before the show, I was watching this new movie, Nosferatu. And the thing about evil is the kind of element of fear. I actually met a guy from Transylvania, and the way he looked at me, and that's the reason why it's so scary, man. It's because of the fear, And this creature in Nosferatu has this really scary breath, man. Like, wow, that's terrifying. So frightening. Like, this guy's got emphysema and blood gurgling in his lungs when he's breathing, looking at you, wanting to eat you. Like, that's terrifying, man. That's scary, yes. But the frickin' people who are in charge, right, the things that they do, way, way scarier. So I came up with this methodology of how to sort of get that fear out of your mind, is by juxtaposing something really horrible and something really scary with something that's very sweet and very cute, maybe even funny. So I do this experiment on people. So you've got to visualize this as you're going through, as you're listening to it. You're going to experience something really, really shocking and horrific at first, and then something really, really nice immediately following it. Now, what's happening here is that your brain will immediately interpret anything it is hearing. Okay, there's no firewall. You can't just ignore things that you hear, right? That's what David Icke told me, is you can't convince anybody of anything, but you can tell them things that they cannot unhear. So here we go. One bad thing, then one good thing, and let's see how your brain reacts to it. Do you go into a stress response, and that stress response does not come down, or do you go into a stress response that immediately gets taken over by the good information? So here we go. Number one, the bad information. I interviewed a woman named Rachel Vaughan, and when she was a 6-year-old little girl, her father, who was a high-level Freemason and a surgeon, used a curved blade to cut a hole in between her anus and vagina, and he raped the wound. Now, the second piece of information is, one time I saw a fluffy kitten and an even fluffier puppy, and they were best friends, and they were wrestling. Do you still feel that fear? Do you still feel that juxtaposition of the horror within you? Or has it been lessened somewhat? Okay, this is because of what naturopath David Holden told me about how humor provides a brain reset. Okay, if you're standing there and you're talking about, so let's say, some dull information, they might be teaching you about trigonometry or calculus or accountancy or something of that nature, something very, very black and white. And after a while, listening to something that is boring, you'll start to, instead of think about the boring things, you'll start to feel bored, right? That's because the prefrontal cortex of your brain that processes black and white can't concentrate all the time on things. And when it loses concentration, it'll then lapse back into the mammalian cortex in the brain that governs your feelings, okay? So what humor does is, when a joke is told or a piece of information of that ridiculous nature suddenly comes into view, your brain resets back into thinking, okay? And the emotions disappear from it, right? This is why I think I've learned so many important things from comedians rather than podcasters and talk radio show hosts, because each time that you might be starting to feel a little bit scared about the things that they're telling you, even though they're true and you did want to hear them in the first place, they make you laugh and your brain resets so that you get the information without the associated trauma of it. That's why I said before about listening to too much Alex Jones, because there's not enough laughter happening there. That's why my show is done the way it is. That's why
you're not easing I think it's like easing the blow of the whole thing. You're not like, I guess it's, I'm trying to think of a good way to just say it, but yeah.
We're giving it a hyperactive delivery system so that the information can go directly into your brain rather than be blocked by your emotional need to protect yourself from it.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Right? This is why we make jokes. Like Dr. Cox in Scrubs, he says, you see that doctor over there? He'd lost a patient in surgery, and he's currently explaining to his family what happened to him in the operating theater. Do you think any of those other people are going to go back to work today? No, but he's going to go back to work, isn't he? That's why we make jokes. We don't do it because it's fun. We do it so we can get by. Mm-hmm. And sometimes because it's fun.
Yeah, totally. And so that's one of the unique things about your work and who you are in this movement, is that you do have a sense of humor. You don't make it boring, and you do help lessen the intensity of the whole thing, which can help you just keep the viewer from like just overly stressed out and losing focus. And because eventually I think that if you stayed in that state of like listening to Alex Jones too much, then it creates an inaction. People just, I know people that were semi, on the path, but they just kind of vegged out on it's usually Alex Jones, but they just veg out on podcasts, and that's who they don't ever exercise any of the information that's coming to them. They just sit on it, and they're not actually taking action helps you to just exercise all the demons that are like keeping you down. And so that's why it's inspiring to hear you say that, like, once you got out of that overthinking, you started to come into your own and do it full time and have it really be your lifestyle, and not just watching someone else do it as their lifestyle while you're just saying, yeah, I'm your cheerleader, rah rah, go you, and fuck everyone that's not like you. But then I am just like all those people in action, but then my mind is at least aware. So that's the transition, is like thought, emotion, and actions come together, and that's when you can create something beautiful.
Yeah, that's what I like to call being congruent. All right. When if you think about something and you feel about it and you act on it, all on the same wavelength. What you're thinking, what you're feeling, what you're doing are all of the same ilk. Why is that important? Is because your ability to generate change in the world or change in your life is directly connected towards the actions you take to improve it. The thoughts you have don't mean anything. The feelings you have don't mean anything unless those thoughts and emotions are backed up with action. Very similar to how I told one of my listeners one time that if you're sitting there and you're accumulating all this knowledge, all right, you're listening to podcast after podcast, and you're not actually doing anything with that information, that is the definition of useless knowledge. Okay, knowledge that is not of use. What's the point in having it if you don't use it? I mean, would you buy a Ferrari and just leave it in the garage? No, you want to go out and drive that puppy. Yes.
And that's what I find interesting too, is, kind of as soon as you said that, it triggered me into another thing, is like musicians listen to more music than fans of bands. And what I found is that I'm a musician. I'm in 2 bands. I've always played music, but it's the people that like music but don't play it. They're not really, their palette isn't expanded. It's always just kind of the most popular band in each genre, or it's just the most popular song, or it's the most predictable like option. It's nothing too underground or avant-garde for people that aren't really involved in music, I noticed. So it's the same kind of thing. It's like, for people that, I think that's why I think this flat earth and these psyops are getting so much more popular than the fundamentals of understanding MK Ultra, understanding how history has been robbed from us, understanding the origins of religion. These fundamental things that used to be researched more in like 2008 from like 2017, when you guys were really coming up. You're getting all this other fluff and minutia from people that just want to have infotainment, I think.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with infotainment. Like, I consider my show and my fabulous mod, DK's show. I have other fabulous mods, but just in his case, he's always trying to entertain as well at the same time inform, and that's why his channel keeps growing. And the guy streams 24 hours a day, right?
Wow.
And he's been doing it for like 5 years, like epic. I've never heard of anybody in any country freaking doing that before. I heard of DK doing it, because I just wouldn't think it was possible. I mean, I tried doing it back in the day, and it's a huge amount of work. Like, it's just to keep something running, like a boiler at the bottom of a apartment complex, or something of that nature that's always constantly breaking down. You constantly got to be attending to it. So it's like, yeah, man, if that's your one job, that's one hell of a job, and just sticking at it is what's really important. I think is there's so many people in this movement, bro, that I've seen come and go like patrons of a prostitution house, right? They come and then they go. And the reason why it is that way is because they don't believe in themselves. They don't believe in what they're doing. Okay. And that kind of thing, that self confidence, that self awareness. I know exactly who I am. All right. This guy came up to me at a festival and he goes, "Oh, Vinny Eastwood, who do you think you are?" And I go, "Well, I'm Vinny Eastwood. Who the fuck are you?"
Ah, that's awesome, man.
You know, these people got no conclusion to really draw there. It was in the oracle's house in the Matrix, written in Latin. It meant know thyself. All right. And knowing yourself is something that's not easy to do because often other people won't be able to inform you about it. You have to go inside. And what Mark Passio talked about, the shadow work, because we've all got darkness within us. And that darkness is not necessarily a bad thing. If you don't got no darkness in you, and some ruthless scumbaggery individual comes through your door and starts threatening to kill and rape your children or something like that, and you got no darkness inside you, how on earth are you going to be able to cut his fucking head off?
Thank you. Yeah, and people just they're big on like let's just be. I put my faith in others. I be kind and like they would never do that and it's just the worst. It's just that naive gullibility. It's not going to get you very far in certainly a situation like that or many other situations that will require courage in life. So but with that I think we have to wrap up. We were short on time. I think you had another engagement late after this. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Well, I didn't want to take up too much more of your time, but thanks so much for your insights, Vinny. And we'd love to have you on again if you'd be open to doing a part two. There's a bunch more questions that I have prepared. So, but yeah, thank you so much for your time, man. Really appreciate everything that you're doing, and go and support Vinny on his Patreon and his channels, and you know, just keep at it.
Thanks, bro. Okay, well, if that's the case, I'd like to do a wee bit of self promo, and you should too. By the time you wrap up a show, you're going to tell people where can people find your show, how can people support your show, and what do you need from them? Do you need them to like, to subscribe, share, that kind of thing? Because when you're talking about the truth, bear in mind that there's a very small section of the population, there's maybe about 4% of us that are actually interested in the truth enough to die for it. All right. And these are the people who will listen to your shows. And as far as my audience is concerned, they're all very skilled. They've got a good sense of humor. They've got a high level of intelligence, and they are fun, to talk to, and they're interesting. They got stories to tell, and that's because I think coming to the truth comes through pain and trauma, and pain are important teachers in life, and we shouldn't necessarily look at it as a bad thing. Marcus Aurelius once said in his meditations, "Do not wish for things to be as you want them to be. Wish for things to be as they are." So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Vinny Eastwood from the VinnyEastwoodShow.com. That's Vinny with a Y, because it's the most important question, not Vinny with an IE, because I'm not an example to follow. The VinnyEastwoodShow.com, and you can follow me on Instagram and Foshbork and Eugenics and X. I just think of the renaming of X.
I love that.
Just,
that was great.
Yeah, I don't really dig it, frankly. Just like, great, whatever. Musk is in charge now. We've got another billionaire trying to save us, Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I'm not impressed myself. But yeah, that's funny because I'm Brian with a Y, and you could find me on Amazing Conspiracy Realist channel on YouTube. That's the only place you can really find me at the time, but right now. But that's going to change because we're building Amazing Conspiracy Realist Academy, and you guys, my audience, knows all about that. And so we're going to expand our horizons here. But right now it's on YouTube. There is a BitChute and Odyssey channel as well, but it's kind of defunct at the moment. There's not a lot of updates on that. I don't need to get into the details of why those were not working out, but I'm moving on to other platforms and going to find a new home soon. But yeah, like and support, and that's really where you can find me at the moment, YouTube. So just like, subscribe. I already have 72 subscribers, so I'm really excited that the numbers are actually growing compared to when I started. So, as long as we keep consistent effort, I think we're gonna be up on the up and up here. So,
all right. Thanks so much for your time, Brian. Oh, and I misspelled your name on the screen. I just realized it's reading as Brain Cirillo.
It's okay. Brain,
It happens, man. It happens. All right. Cheers, bro.
Man.
We'll see you soon.
Cheers, man. See you soon.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day.